welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Well, folks, we got another movie to talk about. Now, for this one, I'm going to talk about another 2025 film, and that movie is currently in theaters almost a month later. And the movie I'm going to talk about is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Now, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is a 2025 action spy film directed by Christopher McQuarrie from a screenplay he co-wrote with Eric Jendrison. It is a direct sequel to Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, which came out in 2023, although the film's original title was called Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Unfortunately, the subtitle was dropped, and I will get to that in a sec. So, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is a direct sequel to Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, which came out in 2023, and it's the 8th installment in the Mission Impossible film series. The film stars Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, alongside an ensemble cast which includes Haley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Isai Morales, Palm Clementif, Henry Czerny, and Angela Bassett. In this movie, Hunt and his Impossible Mission Force team, otherwise known as IMF, work to prevent the Entity, a rogue AI, artificial intelligence. So basically, they're trying to stop a rogue AI from unleashing global destruction against humanity. Now, that sounds like a good plot right there. Now, of course, we will be breaking down this movie. Also to let y'all know, there will be spoilers ahead because this movie has been in theaters for almost a month. So this movie's still playing in theaters. So spoiler alert to anyone who has not seen this movie. So I will be breaking down this movie, plus giving my overall background, and of course my overall thoughts and trivia for this episode. So anyway, just to move forward to talk about this movie, this movie was announced in January of 2019, when Cruise announced that the 7th and 8th Mission Impossible films would be shot back to back, with McQuarrie co-writing and directing both films. Plans for the 8th film later changed in February of 2021, and returning and new cast members were announced soon after, including composer Lorne Balfe, who composed the score for the two other films in the series. Balfe was later replaced by Max Arouge and Alfie Gottfried. Principal photography began in March of 2022, but was halted in July of 2023 due to the SAG-AFTRA strike. Production resumed in March of 2024 and concluded that November with filming locations including England, Malta, South Africa, and Norway. The film, originally titled Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 2, dropped its subtitle in October of 2023, and the new subtitle was announced in November of 2024, which was later retitled Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. This movie has an estimated budget of $300 to $400 million, and it is nominally one of the 20 most expensive films ever made. So, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning had its world premiere in Tokyo on May 5th, 2025, and was screened out of competition at the 78th Cannes Film Festival on May 14th, and was theatrically released in the United States on May 23rd by Paramount Pictures, to which, funny enough, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning came out that same weekend as Walt Disney's live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. You could definitely check out that episode once this episode is over with. So anyway, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning received positive reviews from critics, and of course, it's currently in theaters still. So this movie is still in theaters. So basically, almost a month later, this movie is still in theaters. Of course, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning debuted on the 4-day Memorial Day weekend, and of course it made $79 million across the 4-day Memorial week. The film made $79 million across the 4-day Memorial Day weekend, placing second behind Lilo and Stitch. Despite not topping the box office, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is a first for the franchise, not counting Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol's limited release in IMAX and other large format theaters in its first 5 days, where it finished third. It contributed to the biggest Memorial Day weekend in domestic box office history, with all films combining for a record breaking $334.5 million. Now that's amazing right there. Sure, yes, that movie placed second behind Lilo and Stitch, but I say that's a pretty good start. And just to go off topic, I wish that Lilo and Stitch came out on a different day rather than competing with Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Now, in my opinion, the live action Lilo and Stitch movie should have come out on June 26th. Because, get it? Knowing the Stitch's experiment number 626, get it? June 26th, which is the 6th month of the year. Get it? 626. I mean, that would be funny, but also it would have made sense. It would have made sense because Stitch's experiment number is 626. I mean, I don't understand why Hollywood would have both of these movies come out at the same time. I mean, sure, it can work if done right. Like Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is a sequel, while Lilo and Stitch, the live-action movie, is a remake of the beloved classic that came out in 2002. So my theory is Hollywood was trying to push another Barbenheimer. Although the only difference with that is that the only difference with Barbie and Oppenheimer is that they're both original films that they made, which is the reason why that Barbenheimer phenomenon came to be. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and Lilo and Stitch are just basically a sequel. They're basically a sequel and a live action remake. That's it. Although a lot of people were still interested, although a lot of people were still interested and they went out to see it. So I guess that's something right there. But I'm just saying, the live action remake of Lilo and Stitch should have come out on June 26th. Like I said, June 26th, falling on the 6th month of the year. Just saying. That way, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning can at least, make its money at the box office, because apparently this movie has a budget of $300 to $400 million, which is insane. I don't know why that movie's budget's like that. I don't know why that movie's budget is like that. I mean, hell, the previous movie, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, although at the time it was called Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, had a budget of at least $290 million. I think it was $291 million, to be quite honest. Although that movie made at least $500 million, it wasn't enough to, break even. And the fact that this movie had a budget of $300 to $400 million is insane. And I'm just gonna say this right now: we need to support this movie, guys. Like, when you have a budget of $300 to $400 million, and plus when you have a big movie star like Tom Cruise, who is doing death-defying stunts, you're in it for the action, right? Like you're in for some good. You're in for a lot of good action, and of course Tom Cruise as well. So to anybody who's listening, we need to support this movie. This movie needs a lot of attention, and it does get a lot of attention, but I'm talking about more attention. So we really need to give this movie a lot of attention right there. But anyway, that's enough about that. Let's move forward with the production plus my background. Now, to continue with the production, as I mentioned, this movie was originally going to be titled Part 2, Dead Reckoning Part 2, but unfortunately that subtitle was dropped, and it's basically Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And the filming, and of course, this movie had a lot of trouble. The production of this movie had a lot of trouble, and for good reasons too. Because to anybody's knowledge, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows about this, both Mission Impossible 7 and 8 were affected by COVID-19. Just to throw this out there. Most notably, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. That movie was difficult to make because of the pandemic that was going on, and I can understand, and I can literally understand that too, because to anybody's knowledge, there was an audio recording rant of Tom Cruise ranting about the lockdowns that are affecting Hollywood. Like, he doesn't want this production to be shut down, right? And he proves a real. I mean, he was angry. He was mad as hell with a couple of crew members for not following safety guidelines, and he was like, he goes over the top saying, "We're not shutting this freaking movie down." I can understand where he's coming from, because when you have a movie titled Mission Impossible, you're expecting something big right there, right? And it doesn't help with COVID-19. Plus, you definitely hear Tom Cruise's rant on how he called hundreds and thousands of insurance companies, different people, and plus studios, asking for more, asking for more time and money on this production, opening jobs for all the crew members, and of course the actors as well who are participating in this movie, who are acting and working on this movie. I mean, that is crazy, especially during that is big. And I can understand where Tom Cruise is coming from. Especially how at the end he does calm down a bit at the end of the recording. But you gotta look up the recording. Don't take my word for it. You gotta look up the recording of that. Like, it is crazy. But anyway, the Dead Reckoning Part 1, Dead Reckoning was a good movie. I mean, I enjoyed that movie despite the problems that it had during the pandemic. I mean, this one kind of did a little bit, but there were also other things too. Like for example, the writers, for example, the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike, because the filming for Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning was officially suspended in July of 2023 due to the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. But thankfully, the film returned to production in March of 2024, though in May, it encountered a delay due to a submarine malfunction, because there is a scene that featured a submarine. Now, of course, you do have cast members. I already mentioned some of the cast members. Now, of course, there are some cast members that I did mention to some of the cast members already. And to bring this up, in December, Simon Pegg confirmed his return for the film, while Shea Wigham was also casted. Nicholas Hoult joined the cast by January 2020, along with Henry Czerny, who reprised his role as Eugene Kittredge from Dead Reckoning Part 1 in the first film. However, due to scheduling conflicts, Nicholas Hoult was replaced by Isaiah Morales for both films. So it indicated that Nicholas Hoult was originally going to be the film's villain before he was replaced by Isaiah Morales. However, due to scheduling conflicts, Nicholas Hoult was replaced by Isaiah Morales for both films, which indicated that Nicholas Hoult was originally going to play the film's villain. And then, of course, you had Vanessa Kirby, who first appeared in Fallout, announced she was returning for both films, but did not appear in Final Reckoning. In July of 2022, it was reported that Holt McCallany had joined the cast. And in August, it was revealed that Nick Offerman and Jeanette McTeer were also added to the cast. In March 2023, Macquarie announced Hannah Waddingham, Lucy Tulogarjuk, and Rolf Saxon's addition to the cast, the latter of whom reprises his role from the first movie. And in March and April of 2024, respectively, Katie O'Brien and Tramal Tillman joined the cast in then undisclosed roles. And of course, Angela Bassett revealed that she would reprise her role as CIA Director Erica Sloan in November of 2024. Now, of course, in February 2021, according to Deadline Hollywood, it was reported that the film would no longer be filmed back to back with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. So then by November, McQuarrie was in the process of rewriting the film's script. So now, I'm not really sure what the film's original script for Part 2 was going to be, so I'm not really sure about that, but I think what we got at the end, I thought it was pretty good. Now, of course, they had to film in different locations, and filming took place in the UK at Long Cross Studios and the Lake District. Other locations included Malta, South Africa, and Norway, and in December of 2022, filming was finished in the UK. The crew then moved to Apulia in Italy to continue filming aboard the aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush, and of course, as I mentioned, the SAG-AFTRA strike delayed the movie, or suspended the movie, I should say, but thankfully, production resumed in March of 2024. Now, of course, during filming in England, Cruz and Morales were observed performing stunts from an airborne biplane, with Cruz holding onto the wings of the open cockpit aircraft as it flew upside down, while the pilot wore a green screen suit so as to be digitally removed from the final shot. And in July of 2024, Simon Pegg revealed filming had concluded for his part, though the cast and crew were maintaining radio silence. By November of 2024, production had concluded and the film was in post-production. And of course, the Hollywood Reporter reported that the budget had neared $400 million due to production delays. And that is true right there because of the delays, the stunts they had to go. It is insane. Now, of course, I don't know. Now, as for the story, there was a lot going on in the story, to be quite honest. So that probably explains why the budget ballooned, and of course the delays as well. And when you have a film that is delayed, like let's just say both, like maybe like at least one time to a couple, it adds to the budget. Just to throw this out there, in my personal opinion. But anyway, just to move forward, post-production, Industrial Light and Magic returns from the 7th film to produce the visual effects with Clear Angle Studios and Howland Entertainment as the additional vendors for LiDAR, cyber scanning, and pre-visualization. And in October of 2023, Dead Reckoning Part 2 was removed as the film's subtitle, and the new subtitle was confirmed as The Final Reckoning in November of 2024. And then, of course, Lauren Boff was originally going to compose Mission Impossible 8, but it was later announced in April 2025 that he would be replaced with Max Arouge and Alfie Godfrey, to which Arouge had previously provided additional music for Dead Reckoning and served as technical score assistant on Fallout. Both Arouge and Godfrey have contributed music to numerous projects scored by Boff over the years. So it was actually nice that Boff was able to bring his other buddies on board who have contributed to the previous Mission Impossible movies. So that's pretty good right there. Now that's it for the production. Now I'm going to give you my background on this. And to be quite honest, I'm going to sound like a broken record right here. I was not into Mission Impossible as much. Like, I didn't even know these movies existed. Hell, I didn't even know the TV series existed too. Because, to anybody who's listening, will probably know that there was a Mission Impossible TV show that came out in the 60s. And then, of course, with the popularity of that show, there were Mission Impossible movies. Starting with the first one that came out in 1996 with Tom Cruise. And then, of course, you had Mission Impossible 2. You also had Mission Impossible 3. Along with the other sequels that followed, which is Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and then, of course, Mission Impossible Fallout, plus the other two Mission Impossible movies, Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning. Now, the only Mission Impossible movies that I have seen are Mission Impossibles 4, 5, 7, and 8. I have seen bits and pieces of Mission Impossible 6, to be quite honest. I mean, I need to get around to watching Mission Impossible Fallout, but I have never watched Mission Impossibles 1 through 3, to be quite honest. But my introduction to Mission Impossible was obviously Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. That was actually my first Mission Impossible movie, and I enjoyed that movie. In fact, uh, Brad Bird, who directed Mission Impossible 4, was involved in the first two Incredibles movie, and and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, in my opinion, it had the vibe of a James Bond movie and Incredibles movie a little bit. To be quiet, just in my opinion, I think it's because it's because Brad Bird directed the Incredibles movie, because Brad Bird directed the first two Incredibles movie, and he was involved with Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which is absolutely amazing. That was his first ever live action movie that he have ever directed. And I really enjoyed the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I enjoyed Mission Impossible Rogue Nation as well. Like I said, I gotta get around to watching the whole Mission Impossible Fallout movie, to be quite honest. And then I have seen Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part One, although it's Dead Reckoning now, according to the subtitles being dropped. But Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, I really enjoyed this movie, although to be quite honest, I do have a couple of nitpicks with this movie, most notably with the film's budget being that high, if you know what I'm saying. And then of course some of the characters not getting send-offs, because there's a couple of characters who are not in this movie didn't get, in my opinion, proper send-offs, to be quite honest. But I'll get to that later. So, if you choose to accept this mission, let's start this mission by talking about Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. This episode will activate in 3, 2, 1. So the film opens up with Ethan Hunt being played by Tom Cruise, who listens to a classified message from Erica Sloane, being played by Angela Bassett, who is now President of the United States, while Gabriel, being played by Isai Morales, and the entity remain at large, as the entity has now corrupted cyberspace and manipulated information to turn mankind against one another. A doomsday cult around the entity has even been inspired. The only way to stop the entity is to find its original source code and pair it with the cruciform key that Ethan has managed to keep from Gabriel. Ethan fears that if the government got their hands on the entity, they may use it against other nations. Sloane tells Ethan that killing the entity would completely wipe out all of cyberspace, plunging the world into another war. She pleads with Ethan to surrender before the message self-destructs. And this is basically, your clever mission if you accept this mission, right? And Ethan accepts the mission, but of course you also have this classic line that basically destroys the message, which is basically this message will self-destruct in 10 seconds, which it did. Oh man. My introduction to that part was introduced in the Incredibles movie, where Mr. Incredible was finished listening to the message from I think her name is Mirage, I believe, and he hears his voiceover, and listens to what basically is, this message will self-destruct, and it, and that was my and the message blows up in his face. That was my introduction to that part. Oh man. I'm pretty sure that part played a huge role. I'm pretty sure that part played a big part in the messages for the other Mission Impossible movies, and quite honestly, the TV show as well. So, so yeah. So later on, Ethan reunites with Benji and Luther, both played by Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames, before going to an Austrian prison to break out Gabriel, former accomplice Paris, being played by Pon Clementif, and she is being escorted by agents Jasper Briggs and Theo Degas, both played by Shea Wigham and Greg Tarzan Davis. Until Ethan and Benji infiltrate the prison, they briefly scuffle with two agents until Ethan convinces Jasper and Degas to let them take her for the sake of stopping the entity. The team goes to the US Embassy in London. Two other agents spot Ethan and prepare to turn him in until Grace, being played by Haley Atwell, shows up and pickpockets their items, forcing them to let him go. She tells Ethan that she was sent to find him by Kitris, being played by Henry Cherney, and suddenly a pair of Gabriel goons show up and tranquilize the two, knocking them out cold. Ethan and Grace wake up with their hands tied and are met by Gabriel. He brings up Ethan mission in acquiring the rabbit foot from the third movie, and how it was essentially an early copy of the entity, and Ethan basically handed it to the US government. Ethan and Grace know that the entity has forsaken Gabriel due to his previous failure in getting the key, which is basically in the previous film where Gabriel gets like, I think it was like a cigarette lighter. I think that's what it was, instead of like the cruciform key, which is basically the shape of a crucifix. And Gabriel screams, "Ethan!" That's what Gabriel screamed at the end of the movie. And let's just say it was a funny response because Gabriel failed his mission on getting the cruciform key because of how Gabriel failed at of holding on to the cruciform key. But of course, knowing the fact that Ethan pickpocketed Gabriel, much like how Haley Atwell's character did in the previous movie. So anyway, Gabriel orders Ethan to find the rabbit foot from the sunken Sevastopol submarine. Ethan then produces a cyanide cap since he knows Gabriel needs him alive. After biting down onto it, Ethan starts to foam at the mouth, and Gabriel orders his goons to revive him as he slips away. Once freed, Ethan beats the living crap out of the goons and kills them before freeing Grace and fleeing. Ethan and Grace run into Benji, Paris, and Theo Degas, and they come upon a large device that Gabriel uses to communicate with the entity. Ethan gets inside and connects himself so that he may also talk to the AI. The entity knows that Ethan plans to destroy it using a poison pill that Luther developed and connecting it with the entity core model or the Podkova. It shows Ethan visions of nuclear war and wants Ethan to help bring it to the Doomsday Vault in South Africa, which has a server room where it may survive. Ethan splits from the team so they can retrieve the coordinates to the Sevastopol location. He races on foot to go find Luther, as he knows Gabriel is targeting him since he warned Ethan that someone close to him would die. Gabriel has taken Luther from the hospital where he was at and has placed him underground with a bomb, along with stealing the poison pill. If it goes off, it can take out the entire city, but Luther tries to limit its proximity, and Ethan and Luther share a final moment before Ethan runs, and Luther is taken out in the ensuing explosion. Out on the streets, Jasper finds Ethan, and he surrenders himself and the key to Jasper. On board a plane back to the US, Ethan reveals he has known that Jasper's real name is Jim Phelps Jr., making him the son of Ethan's former mentor and the IMF agent who betrayed him and the rest of his team before Ethan killed him. While Ethan knows that the entity wants to turn Jasper against him, Jasper suggests that when all is said and done, they will deal with each other. Ethan is met by Kittredge, who informs him that the entity has already begun breaking into several nuclear arsenals around the world, with only a few left that are still secure. Ethan is brought to meet with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, including General Sidney, being played by Nick Offerman. They review Ethan. They review Ethan being infamous. They review Ethan's. They review Ethan's infamous exploits, such as his breaking into a CIA vault from the first movie and outrunning the Kremlin bombing from the fourth. Even though the villain in the fourth one was the one who was trying to kill Ethan prior to the bombing of the Kremlin. And of course, Sloane arrives telling Ethan she wants him to help them control the entity, but he does not trust any one person to handle a weapon like that. Ethan convinces her to allow him to work alone in locating the Sestapole, or else a full-scale nuclear attack within 72 hours will go off. And this is basically Ethan Hunt saying, I need you to trust me one last time. Which is the line that he said in the trailer, to which I thought is a good line that Ethan Hunt would say. And let's be honest, it's one last mission for Ethan Hunt. Or is it? So anyway, Ethan is taken to a carrier in the Northern Pacific to meet with Admiral Neely, being played by Hannah Waddingham. And of course, this carrier I would like to call the Top Gun Cruise carrier or something like that. And the reason being because I got Top Gun references because I didn't think part of the movie would take place on a carrier, much like in Top Gun. So nice little Top Gun references right there, Tom Cruise. I see what you did right there. Mm-hmm. I mean, Tom Cruise is the producer on this movie, and I think Christopher McQuarrie was also involved in Top Gun Maverick. But anyway, moving forward, Ethan hands her an envelope given to him by Sloane with the date May 22nd, 1996, written on it. Neely knows it is because both her and Sloane served in Siberia on that date and lost someone close to them. She reluctantly helps Ethan arrive at the Bering Sea, where the IMF team will meet him above the ice caps at a very specific time and place. Benji, Grace, Paris, and Degas arrive at St. Matthew Island to the home of William Donello, being played by Rolf Saxon, who originally worked at the CIA and was transferred there after Ethan Vault break-in. Donello lives with his wife Tapisa, being played by Lucy Tulogarjuk, and despite trying to maintain a cover, Benji cannot help but geek out when he meets Donello, forcing Grace to come clean about why they have come seeking him. Donello knows of the Sestapole coordinates, though he realizes that they are dealing with the entity. Making matters more complicated are a team of Russian mercenaries that are already in Donello's house, as they are also looking for the Sestapole. The team helps fight back against the Russians in a gunfight, but Donello's house burns down. They manage to get him and Tapisi out of there. Ethan is dropped off into the Bering Sea and meets with a team led by Captain Bledsoe, played by Tramell Tillman. As he is preparing himself to dive underwater, one member of the team, Hager, being played by Thomas Paredes, is revealed to be an acolyte of the entity and tries to murder Ethan. Like, both Hager and Ethan get into a fist fight that started on the treadmill. Both Ethan and Hager are trying to basically trying to beat the living crap out of each other because because Hager is basically an acolyte at this point, because Hager wants the entity to happen while Ethan is trying to not let the entity happen, right? they're both beating the living crap out of each other. Like, even at one point, like, the fight starts on a treadmill that Ethan is on. Like, Ethan falls off, like, Ethan slips on that treadmill prior to that fight. And of course, Hager gets knocked out by another team member, Kodiak, being played by Katie O'Brien. She knocked his ass out. Cold. Like, damn, that was brutal. There were even times where Hager almost stabbed Ethan with a knife. Dude, that would have ended badly for Ethan Hunt. So anyway, the sub-team arrives at the coordinates, dropping Ethan off into the waters with a suit of their own, and then Kodiak promised Ethan to bring this water suit back. Unfortunately, he doesn't. So Ethan makes it inside the cesspool and finds the bodies of crew members who were not sucked out of the sub when it was hit. Ethan manages to find the Podkova, but he has tilted the sub, which has started to sink further down the continental drift. Ethan tears off his suit in order to get out. Apparently, Kodiak will not get that suit back. Well, that sucks. And Ethan starts to drown as he hits the ice caps, right where the team was stated to find him. He is pulled out of the water by Grace. So at that point, Ethan Hunt is basically, he drowned, right? He literally drowns in this movie until he gets revived by Grace inside this decompression chamber. So Ethan rejoins the team. He speaks to Donalo and is apologetic about being the reason he was relocated to the Arctic. But Donalo says he has no regrets since that is where he met Tapisa. The team then discusses their plan to upload the entity to a physical drive after connecting the poison pill to the Podkova. But the tricky part is doing it at the right time, not a moment too early or too late. Ethan anticipates that Gabriel is already at the Doomsday Vault and that he is waiting for them to surrender the Podkova to him so that he may control the entity. Ethan also entrusts Grace with the job of doing the upload. Back in the US, Sloane and her cabinet are discussing contingency plans as the entity is targeting several major cities, and they suggest one alternative is to deliberately nuke a city of Sloane, choosing to spare the lives of billions. After Sloane picks a city, she prepares to launch the nuke until she makes the decision to take all American nukes offline to prevent the entity from gaining any access into their arsenal. However, another secret acolyte tries to shoot Sloane, but Sidney takes the shot and kills the acolyte himself before succumbing to his wound. The rest of the cabinet complies with the orders from Sloane. The team makes it down to the vault, where they are met by Gabriel, along with Jasper and Kittredge. In the middle of the area is a large nuclear device that Gabriel has triggered to go off within 20 minutes. Kittredge wants to take the poison pill and Podkova so that the US can control the entity, but a gunfight breaks out, leaving Gabriel room to escape with the poison pill. Ethan goes after him while Benji, Grace, and Paris make it into the server room to complete the upload. Benji gets shot and requires an impromptu surgery from Paris, who manages to save him as he guides Grace through the process of performing the upload. Donalo, Tapisa, and Degas stay behind to disarm the nuke. Gabriel gets away in a biplane, but Ethan latches himself onto another passing plane after taking out the pilot, who was probably a bad guy. But Ethan chases Gabriel and gets into a dogfight with him. Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking. Now we're going to do a special class section, which is basically dogfight 101 with Ethan Hunt and Gabriel. So Ethan chases Gabriel and gets into a dogfight with him, and after a while, Gabriel manages to catch on to Ethan while the plane is failing, so Ethan jumps into Gabriel's plane. And Ethan knocks Gabriel out and takes the poison pill. Then Ethan loosens Gabriel's seatbelt, leaving him hanging for dear life. And holy crap, isn't that dogfight amazing, right? Like this feels absolutely real, right? This feels absolutely real. Like this is a real stunt that both Isaiah Morales and Tom Cruise were doing. Like this is a real actual stunt fight that they're actually doing in the air. And while the fight was going on, Gabriel brags and laughs about being the only one with a parachute before letting go. Like Gabriel, who is being cocky at this point, he's like, ha 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 ha! Only one of us has got a parachute! So long, Ethan! But of course, Gabriel's cocky attitude bites him in the ass, and as he lets go, he hits the plane's rudder groin first, smashing him in the balls before smashing his skull against it. Like, dude, he basically killed himself at this point by being cocky. Like, it wasn't suicidal, it was just basically Gabriel being a cocky asshole, and he just killed himself in the most craziest way possible by just like, being this, stereotypical villain saying, "So long, sucker." Like he's being this stereotypical mustache twirly villain, like saying, like telling Ethan, "So long, sucker." But nope, he lets go, gets hit in the balls by the plane rudder before smashing his skull against it. That is brutal right there. And he plummets to the ground below. And that's the end of Gabriel. So anyway, Ethan tries to deploy another parachute, but it burns up in the air. Ethan continues falling but manages to connect the poison pill and Podkova. And Grace manages to complete the upload at just the right time, finally trapping the entity for good in 10th of a second, mind ya. So anyway, Donalo, Tapisa, and Dagus manages to disarm the bomb and escape the explosion in time. Ethan is saved by a backup parachute, and the poison pill then plays a final message from Luther, who knew that Ethan would do what it took to save the world. He repeats the IMF oath, and I quote, "We live and die in the shadows, for those we hold close, and those we never meet," and gives Ethan a final goodbye. Ethan is found by Kittredge and Jasper. Kittredge is annoyed at seeing the fried Podkova because the Podkova self-destruct after the message, but Jasper appears to have forgiven Ethan for what happened with his father, and they part on good terms. The IMF team meets in London, all at a distance from each other. Grace approaches Ethan to give him the entity in its drive. Ethan shares looks with Benji, Paris, and Grace one more time before they go their separate ways into the shadows once more. And then of course you got the Mission Impossible theme playing as the credits roll. The music that was composed by the original Mission Impossible composer was by Boris Claudio Lalo Schifrin, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name correctly, and I do apologize if I mispronounce any of the names. And that is basically it. That is my breakdown on Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. Now, just to give him my overall thoughts for this movie. Now, I thought the movie itself, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, I thought it was really good. Now, not the best Mission Impossible movie, but I thought it was a real good one. I thought it was a good one on its own level. I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, nowhere near as good as Dead Reckoning Part 1 or just simply Dead Reckoning or Fallout, but it still served as a good Mission Impossible movie, especially knowing the fact that this is supposed to be like a send off for Ethan Hunt's character, which I thought it did pretty well on, especially for the characters that come. Plus, I mean, plus the action in this movie is really good. Most notably, the plane sequence when Ethan and Gabrielle are flying in these biplanes and they're just basically doing this dogfight. Like, it's just basically, in my opinion, like Top Gun biplane, because they're flying in those biplanes. Get a little Top Gun reference right there, except they're flying in biplanes instead of jets. I mean, if you know what I'm saying, right? And those are actual planes and stunts that those are actual planes and actual stunts that they pulled off. And Tom Cruise and Isai Morales did all those stunts. They both actors did those stunts, and they pulled it off very well. And then of course the submarine sequence when Ethan is going inside that submarine to get that Podkova from the submarine. I thought that whole sequence was pretty. I thought that whole sequence was awesome, especially when Ethan had to find his way out of the submarine through the torpedo tubes because of the fact that it was filling up with water. It was filling up with water. It's like Titanic a little bit, but this time in a submarine. And I know they had to use the visual effects for the outside portion of the submarine, but it still worked. But the way how it was executed is really really good. I love how it was executed. Even though it sucks that Tom Cruise lost that suit, that little scuba diving suit that he wore, because part of it has like the oxygen that is able to help him breathe, especially when he was in deep, deep water, especially in the Arctic. Oof, that is cold. Like, that is cold. But I'm glad that Ethan Hunt was able to come out of it. But I'm glad that Ethan Hunt was revived after that. But that whole sequence right there, that was a really good sequence. That and the dogfight aerial sequence left you on the edge of your seats. Like, those are probably the two best. Those two sequences, those two scenes are probably the best action sequences that I have ever seen in a Mission Impossible movie. And there's a lot of action scenes in Mission Impossible, but it's kind of hard which one will top it all, if you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, but when it comes to the best moments in Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, the dogfight aerial sequence, and of course the submarine sequence, probably the two best scenes to come out of that movie. And then also you do have the moments between Ethan Hunt. I mean, Ethan Hunt. Let's be honest. He was obviously a great character in that movie. I mean, it's all thanks to Tom Cruise. Like, Tom Cruise really knocked it out of the ballpark. And of course, him connecting with, and of course, him interacting with all, of course, interacting with different characters, amazing. Especially his chemistry with Luther. Like, it is sad that Luther had to die in this movie. He was only in the beginning of the movie. Like, Ving Rhames did a fantastic job playing Luther, and he was only in it for the beginning of the movie. And it's sad, and it's really sad that his character had to go out like that in the explosion. But but you know what? Him and Ethan Hunt really bonded pretty well. They really bonded a very good friendship since like since they first met. And it's really sad that they had to go. It is really sad that their friendship had to end like that. I mean, Luther really kicked off the final mission for Ethan Hunt. And that's all thanks to both Tom Cruise and Ving Rhames. They both did a real good job. Same with Simon Pegg, Haley Atwell, and Palm Clementif. Though they all did a pretty good job too. They all did a very good job performing their characters. And heck, there was a character that I didn't even realize. William Donlow. Like, I didn't know that he was a character from the first film. I didn't think that. And heck, I didn't think William Donlow would play a major role. It's because like William Donlow played. His role was pretty minor. I have not seen the first Mission Impossible movie, but he he played a CIA analyst in the first movie, and we never see him until this movie. So it's kind of amazing that they were able to use this character for this movie. And then, of course, you got the villain. I thought the villain was okay. Not a great. I thought the villain Gabriel was okay. In my opinion, Gabriel was a good villain. I mean, but the only thing is, he was basically your typical mustache twirling villain, right? And he kind of had that moment during the dogfight where he was about to leave, saying, "One of us has got a parachute. So long, sucker." Basically saying goodbye. That's kind of like the whole, stereotypical mustache twirly villain moment. But of course, that whole cocky attitude, bite him in the ass, or should I say, hit him in the head, I should say. But yeah, but even then, I also appreciated how there were flashback moments throughout this movie, most notably in the beginning of the movie, because in the beginning of the movie, when Tom Cruise is listening to is watching this video, and there's like a message from the president. There's like multiple flashback scenes put together of from the previous movies that Ethan Hunt did, all the missions that Ethan Hunt did from the previous movies. I really appreciate that too. Even some of the missions that they were doing, like I do appreciate the plan for their mission in this movie. Like they start off with this plan and it shows like scenes of what Ethan Hunt is going to do on this mission. Like he's going to retrieve that Podkova from the submarine and such, just as an example. And I thought that was clever, and I thought they did a pretty good job. Like it's like a visualization of what the mission's going to be, right? And I thought that was pretty good, especially where they're gonna meet next. And then what else? Of course, obviously enough, Tom Cruise running. Tom Cruise running. I mean, he always does his running form. I don't know what's with his running form, but I dig it. And then this movie had a huge cast. Like there's a lot of characters in that movie. A lot of supporting characters. Like there's a lot of supporting characters in this movie that really helped Ethan along the way during his mission, and I thought that was very good. I mean, man, there's a lot of characters to point out. There's a lot of characters in that movie that really that were either against Ethan or supported Ethan, if you know what I'm saying, right? And then of course, obviously in the music, you can't beat the music. You can't beat the original theme. Dun 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 dun. I mean, you can't forget that. But even before the movie, I saw this movie in theaters. Tom Cruise did a message for the people who are seeing this movie in theaters as a special thank you, right? Thanking the people thanking the audience for coming out to see this movie, while also acknowledging the cast and crew who put this movie together. Like, let's be honest, this movie really went through the ringer, all right? Like the multiple delays through the pandemic, the SAG-AFTRA strikes, and of course trying to get all the cast and crew together. Like it is tough. And Tom Cruise acknowledging and sending a message out to the people who are watching this movie, I thought that was a really good touch. Knowing the fact that there will be people who will enjoy this movie. And of course, this will obviously segue into some of the negatives of this movie. So I mentioned that I have a couple of nitpicks about this movie, and let's be honest, I have a couple nitpicks, but bear with me. Now, I've already mentioned this, that the budget of this movie is between 300 to 400 million, which is something that I dislike. I'm not a big fan I'm now maybe at the time I used to be fans of these big budgets, but now looking back and now looking at it, I'm just like, why does this movie have a big budget? I do not understand. Hollywood believes that big budget movies can, crank in a lot of money. Now, that's true if done right. I mean, it seems to me that this movie had the proper story to do it, but unfortunately, going back to what I said, this movie had to face a lot of delays, right? This movie faced multiple delays, and when a movie like that is delayed multiple times, it adds to the budget. So a delay can add to the budget. As for the story, to me the story is all over the place, but I think what they had for the story, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good story. Not a great story, but a good story at best. Plus, you also had the multiple stunts that were going on in this movie, like how I mentioned the dogfight sequence, the dogfight aerial sequence, and then of course you have the submarine sequence that took place. I mean, that must have added a lot. That must have been a huge thing for the budget right there. And of course, I don't know how much Tom Cruise got paid, but man, that money must have been worth. But man, that money must have been worth it for Tom Cruise right there. But I guess you could say the budget that they had was okay. I guess you could say the studio wanted to go out on a high note, so they gave Tom Cruise this budget, and they're like, you know what, do what you want with it. I think that's what they did, but I'm not the expert. I'm not a money expert on this, but who knows? But who knows? Who knows? But but who knows? So yeah, that's my little nitpick on the budget, and then another nitpick would be the character of Gabriel. Now look, I think Gabriel is a decent. Now I think Gabriel is a good villain. He's not a great villain, not as great as some of the other Mission Impossible villains. Like he's not as memorable as some of the other Mission Impossible villains. Now, like I said, I have not seen Mission Impossibles 1 through 3. I have seen the other Mission Impossible movies like 4, 5, and of course 7 and Final Reckoning, and a little bit of Fallout. But of course, you have villains like Solomon Lane. Solomon Lane was a really good villain in the other two Mission Impossible movies, basically 5 and 6. Like I said, I have not seen 6, but I do know that he's in that movie. But Gabriel, he played a big role in Mission Impossible 7, even though at the end he got foiled by Ethan Hunt, which was actually, to be quite honest, that was a really good move that Ethan Hunt did, pickpocketing the cruciform key. But in this one, he's barely in the movie at all. Like Gabriel, he was only in it for the beginning, up until the whole opening credits sequence, which is basically about, I want to say about 15, 10, 20 minutes into the movie. Like it led into the credits, which played the Mission Impossible theme, which obviously enough, really good way to open the movie. But yeah, Gabriel was only in it for the beginning of the movie, and he was basically absent for a good chunk of this movie up until the final act. So why have him as your villain if he's not in it for for a good chunk of the movie, right? He was in Dead Reckoning for a good chunk, but even though there are some scenes where he's absent, but why not Mission Impossible Final Reckoning? I don't understand that. I mean, but I think he still served as a good villain. Like I still think he served a good purpose, especially how, especially the way how he went out. Like, dude, that was brutal. Dude, that was brutal. But still, it still baffles me that he was absent for a good chunk of the movie. He was only in it for the beginning, and he was only in it for the ending of this movie. Just pointing this out. And of course, while I'm at it for villain, Kittredge, Mr. Kittredge, who is also helping Ethan out, he also wanted the entity as well. Like Kittredge interrupts the whole thing, and this is like at the end of the movie, and he wants control of the entity, and I'm just like, whoa, whoa, whoa! When did he become a villain? Like he was only a villain for like 1 minute, and then he just turned back into being a good guy. Like he was being a villain for a moment, just to have the entity for himself until the whole gunfight came to happen, and he just basically decides to become a good guy once more. I don't understand that part. Where did that come from? What's going on? But that's just a little nitpick right there. But anyway, that's enough about that. And of course, Isai Morales did a fantastic job playing Gabriel in this, in not only Final Reckoning but also Dead Reckoning as well. He did a really good job playing this character. But anyway, the movie had a runtime of 2 hours and 50 minutes. I kind of want to nitpick a little bit, because you have a 2 hour and 50 minute runtime, and wouldn't that runtime be able to fill in the gaps of the previous movies as to have a proper send off, right? I think that would have worked a little more for some of the supporting characters, and maybe a little more time for Gabriel to at least have one or two scenes in the middle of the movie rather than having him, just pop up in the beginning and ending of the movie. He could still, I mean, just for a little more screen time, if you know what I'm saying, right? But also, this last part does segue into my last nitpick, and that is basically some of the characters not getting proper send offs. Now, now I'm gonna point out some characters who didn't really get like a proper send off. Now of course some of it was probably for good reason why they didn't, and I can understand that. But I just wanted to point it out, and it really disappointed me that some of these characters didn't get a proper send off, or at least brought back into this movie. But I'm only gonna point out a few characters that didn't get a proper send off. Now the first character I want to bring up is Alana Mitsopolis, and she's being played by Vanessa Kirby. So Alana appeared in Mission Impossible Fallout and Dead Reckoning, and she was not in the she was not in Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Now last time we saw her was in Dead Reckoning, so you're probably wondering what happened to her. Although it is revealed that while she was initially slated to appear in both films, the Hollywood Reporter reported and was seen filming scenes, her absence is likely due to a combination of factors. First, the story may not have required her return, as the film is focused on Ethan Hunt's final confrontation with the entity. And second, Kirby's commitment to filming the Fantastic Four First Steps movie, where she plays Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, likely created scheduling conflicts. And I think that's a really good point right there. She had scheduling issues with Fantastic Four, plus having the film focus on Ethan Hunt's final confrontation with the entity. I think that's a really good point. But the one thing I don't understand is her character in Dead Reckoning. Her character in Dead Reckoning had a near fatal stabbing by Gabrielle aboard the Orient Express, and she survives a near fatal stab. So she survives a near fatal stab in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning by Gabrielle, but unfortunately we don't but so she's alive, but we don't see her in Final Reckoning. So what does that mean for her character? So is her character actually alive, or is she actually dead? Although, of course, it actually says that she survives, so she's basically alive. The problem is she never got a proper send off, which is basically disappointing, to be quite honest. But to be fair though, there were definitely scheduling conflicts where she was unable to appear. I really wish there was a mention for her character, at least from the CIA, letting Ethan know, hey, we know, Alana congratulates you on the mission that you completed. I feel like that could have been something, but I don't know. But yeah, that's basically it for her character. So she's not in this movie. So Dead Reckoning was basically her last appearance. So yeah, I mean she's still alive, but I wish she got a proper send off though. All right, let's move forward. Next character I want to bring up, and this was from Mission Impossible 4, and that would be the character of Jane Carter, who is played by Paula Patton. So apparently, Paula Patton did not return to play Jane Carter in the previous Mission Impossible sequels. Her only Mission Impossible movie was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Well, apparently they were originally going to have her in Mission Impossible 5. Unfortunately, the reason why she was not in any of the sequels is that there are scheduling conflicts for the actress, and that's another reason, scheduling conflicts. So there's a lot of scheduling conflicts for some of the actors who did not appear in the later Mission Impossible sequels. And of course, so apparently there was scheduling conflicts for some of these actors who weren't able to return to play their characters. Like, like Paula Patton and Vanessa Kirby, for example. And it's actually sad because because I really like Jane Carter in Mission Impossible 4. It is sad that she did not appear in Mission Impossible 5, 6, and 7, nor 8, because I feel like her character would have at least got a proper send off. But of course, I mean, she was alive at the end of. She was alive after Mission Impossible 4, even though, like, she got shot in the gut by one of the film's villains towards the end of the movie, but she survived at the end. So so it is sad that she never got like a proper ending. So yeah. And speaking of Mission Impossible 4, Jeremy Renner was in Mission Impossible 4, and he also played a character too. Unfortunately, I mean his character's name was Agent William Brandt. He only appeared in Mission Impossibles 4 and 5, and he was not in the previous sequels. So what happened? Well, apparently he declined to appear in Mission Impossible 6 due to a combination of scheduled conflicts and a storyline where his character was to be killed off. And of course, Jeremy Renner spoke out about this too. He expressed disappointment at being asked to return for a brief appearance, only to have his character die. He also noted that the long term commitment of the franchise conflicted with his family responsibilities. So Jeremy Renner had a pretty good reason, but I really do wish his character would get a proper send off instead of, being killed off. I think killing off his character, that would have been a bad idea. I don't want to see a character being killed off like that unless there's like a proper reason for that. I mean, let's be honest. I think Luther's character, I mean, let's be honest. I think the way how they killed off Luther, I can understand where they were going with that. But let's be honest, they kind of knew, I guess the writers knew that they were going to have to kill off one character at least to send Ethan on his mission and to, I guess avenge but also complete the mission. So I guess that's the reason why they killed off Luther in that movie. That's probably one of the reasons. But I'll be honest, having a storyline for Jeremy Renner's character, I got a feeling that would not have worked. So I'm kind of glad Jeremy Renner was not in the previous sequels. But to be fair though, I wish he had a cameo at least to have like, keep the character alive, but also have a proper send off, right? Because the character of William Brandt played a big role in Mission Impossible 4 and 5. I mean, heck, at the end of 5, he's basically working for the CIA. I mean, I guess you can say that's kind of a good send off for Jeremy Renner's character, but I think that was okay. I'm still kind of sad that he didn't appear in any of the other sequels. I wish it was written better. Have a send off that is written better. That would have been a better way for a proper send off. And that's basically it for these characters. Now, those are some of the characters that I mentioned. I didn't bring up all the characters because like I said, I have not seen all of the Mission Impossible movies. I have not seen Mission Impossibles 1 through 3. I have only seen Mission Impossibles 4, 5, parts of 6, and of course 7 and 8. That's it. Alright. And I think that's it in terms of the negatives that I had for this movie. Now, to conclude this episode, let's talk about some trivia for this. Let's talk about some trivia for this movie, shall we? So, Here's something that is interesting. Haley Atwell was 8.5 months pregnant when she shot a fight scene for the movie. That's actually interesting right there. Now, I don't know what fight scene that she was doing, but Haley Atwell is not the only actress. To anybody who knows Haley Atwell played Agent Carter in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, most notably Captain America. And I find it interesting because Haley Atwell, who has worked for Marvel, is not the only Marvel actress who shot a movie while pregnant. Another example is Scarlett Johansson, and she was actually pregnant while filming Avengers Age of Ultron. And speaking of Marvel actress, Pom Klementieff, she played Mantis in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and she played Paris, and she worked so hard on her stunts that she was nicknamed Pom Cruise. that's that's pretty funny right there. All right, moving forward. In October of 2023, in addition to announcing that the film would be delayed nearly a year, Paramount also announced that the film would drop the Dead Reckoning Part 2 subtitle, but it will still be a direct sequel. And I've already mentioned the subtitle being dropped already. I already said that already throughout the episode. Alright, moving forward. Angela Bassett, who played the president, was supposed to return in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, but issues over COVID-19 quarantine ruled that out. Her character's election as president was implied in that film, in which her picture can be seen hanging on the wall during the intelligence community meeting. Here's another trivia for you. The 7th and 8th installments were planned to be filmed back to back. This changed after the 7th completed filming due to Tom Cruise having to leave to do promotion for Top Gun Maverick, as well as the difficulties of filming massive action scenes under the strict COVID-19 prevention protocols. And I kind of mentioned that COVID-19 already, because let's be honest, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning had a tough production because of COVID-19. I guess you could say the same thing for the Final Reckoning, but let's just say, there were a lot of other things like the SAG-AFTRA strike that also took into effect for this movie as well. So anyway, moving forward, the skydiving scene was filmed by having Tom Cruise leap out of a helicopter while wearing a harness with a rod mounted to his abdomen. A small character was attached to the end of the rod, facing him so the rod remained out of the camera's frame. That's interesting right there. And then, of course, this movie is set to be, and of course, the movie was set to be released before Tom Cruise's 63rd birthday, and he was 33 when the first film released in 1996. So I guess happy birthday to Tom Cruise. That's a nice birthday gift. That's a nice birthday gift for Tom Cruise. Oh, here's an interesting trivia. The opening credits sequence doesn't appear on screen until 23 minutes into the movie. Wow, that's amazing. Feels like it's like you're waiting for the opening credits sequence to happen, and you wait like almost half an hour. You wait over 20 minutes for that to happen, right? And of course, so the film's runtime is, well, technically I was a minute off. Wow, I was a minute off. The film's runtime was 169 minutes, which is 2 hours and 49 minutes. This and, of course, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, with a runtime of 2 hours and 49 minutes, is the longest Mission Impossible film to date, surpassing the previous record of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, which had a runtime of 163 minutes, which is 2 hours and 43 minutes. And of course, this movie took place 2 months after the events of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. And of course, moving forward, the Osprey pilot tells Ethan, "We are at bingo." This is the military aviation term meaning there is just enough fuel left to return to base. Huh, how come Tom Cruise didn't use that for Top Gun? And of course, Tom Cruise and Ving Rhames are the only actors who appear in all of the Mission Impossible movies. So that's good right there. And of course, Tom Cruise became a Guinness World Record title holder for the second time as the most burning parachute jumps by an individual by performing the stunt 16 times. The first Guinness World Record was for being an actor with the most consecutive $100 million grossing movie, starting with 2012's Jack Reacher and ending with Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And here's another thing. The CVN 77 USS George H.W. Bush is the aircraft carrier featured in this movie. It is the last of Nimitz class carriers and the fourth carrier featured in a Tom Cruise film. And the CVN 65 USS Enterprise was featured in Top Gun, and the US Enterprise was the first nuclear powered carrier in the world. The CVN 71 USS Theodore Roosevelt and the CVN 72 USS Abraham Lincoln were both featured in Top Gun Maverick. Both are Nimitz class carriers. USS Abraham Lincoln was featured in the opening sequence without Tom Cruise on board. And of course, I've already mentioned that Lorne Balfe did not compose Final Reckoning, but of course but his collaborators Max Roach and Alfie Gottfried did the score for this movie. So therefore, this is the second Mission Impossible film in the franchise directed by Christopher McQuarrie to not feature Balfe as a score composer. The first was Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation, with a score composed by Joe Kramer. And of course, Hannah Waddingham, who was in this movie, she played Commander Neely in this movie. She played the Grand Council woman in in the live action remake of Lilo and Stitch, which also came out the same weekend as Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. Just to let you know, right? And of course, I also mentioned Tom Cruise and Isaiah Morales performed their own stunts when flying in the biplane, including when Cruise holds onto the metal wings of the aircraft as it spins upside down. Meanwhile, the pilot of the plane wore a suit made out of green screen material so they could be digitally removed to make it look like nobody is in the cockpit. Now that is a daredevil move right there. And like I said, both Tom Cruise and Isaiah Morales both performed this stunt. And of course, Luther's dying words are, and I quote, "No one is safe from Phineas Farik," a callback on the very first film in the franchise where it was established that this was one of Luther's aliases. Of course, the rabbit's foot makes its return to the franchise after 19 years. Tom Cruise has often said that though it was simply meant to be an object to propel the plot, fans of the franchise are still very much wanting to know what its purpose was. The key to Ethan's handcuffs in Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation was purposefully adorned with an actual rabbit's foot keychain as a reference for the fans. And of course, the character Briggs, being played by Shea Wigham, reveals that he is the son of Jim Phelps, the antagonist of the first film and the IMF leader of the original TV series in seasons 2 through 7. The name Briggs is also presumably a reference to Dan Briggs, the IMF leader in season 1 of the show. And of course, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning is the first film in the franchise to make extensive use of flashback footage to previous films. And of course, despite several flashbacks of the previous movies, Jeremy Renner is absent of them. He played William Brandt in Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol and of course Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. And of course, mentioning William Donlow once more, the final fate of CIA analyst William Donlow after the events of Mission Impossible, which came out in 1996, it turns Rolf Saxon into the actor with the longest hiatus of the franchise to reprise a character. That is basically it. That is basically the trivia for this movie, folks. And there you have it, folks. That is my take on Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. Now, just to conclude, if I were to rank this movie, I give it an 8 out of 10. From the way of how it was shown in this movie, I enjoy it for what it is. So there you have it, folks. That is my overall take on Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I enjoy this movie for what it is, despite some nitpicks that I have with this movie. I have fun with it, even though I wish this movie did not have competition with Lilo and Stitch, the live-action remake. But anyway, I'm glad this movie came out. And to anybody who's listening, we need to support this movie. Like, this movie had a huge impact, despite the production that it went through. And my goodness, this movie needs all the support. This movie needs all the support it wants. Like, we should support this movie. And a big shout out to Tom Cruise, all the actors and crew members who literally put the work and effort to bring this movie to life. Big shout out to Tom Cruise and the rest of the crew for bringing this movie to life. And so anyway, and to anybody who's listening, if I miss out on anything from this movie, please let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This episode will appear on my YouTube channel. Of course, Spotify and Podbean as well. So please comment below and keep the comments positive. My YouTube channel is Mark Codo, which is where my Codo Cinema episodes are also on as well. So anyway, that is a wrap for this episode. So what did you guys think of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning? Did you like this movie? Have you seen this movie? Did you think this movie was okay? Did you not like this movie? I would love to hear your thoughts. But anyway, that will be a wrap for this episode. Mission accomplished. So, anyway, thank you all for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. This episode will self-destruct. Uh-oh. Oh, man. I didn't think this episode will self-destruct in my face. Don't worry. I'm doing alright. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.